Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric, this finger show. It's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Your Honor. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's focus on the Lee situation. Obviously, her, being Kofi's lawyer, and the fact of the matter is she kind of knows what's what, because she's like, yeah, there's this urban legend about basically certain cops locking someone in a very beat up car and then gassing them. And it's like, obviously, there's no signs of physical, like torture or abuse, but the key sign to it is someone's eyes turning red and Kofi's telling her to stop. Because obviously she's trying to help with the situation, because she's like, obviously with this situation, depending on how they want to go about it, the year range is from 5 to 30. And so they want to keep it on the lesser side. So she wants to try and present some stuff about, like, so that they can potentially get his sentence, like, lessened. Obviously, things don't really, obviously there's benefits of, like, this is the first, crime. He's never committed a crime in the past before either, so he's young, so these kind of work in his favor. Doesn't leave work in his favor is taking his cell phone, because obviously they're thinking, like, the person who was on the other side wheezing. I was under the impression that they took it as, like, oh, that's the person who ran him over. So, but they know that someone's inhaler was there. So I don't know whether they think the person wheezing was actually the person that was wheezing was actually Rocco. That might be, because I thought it was kind of him. Like, I interpreted it last episode like, oh, he's going to recognize the wheezing when he's around Adam, and Adam starts wheezing. It was like, wait, it was you. Because he might put the inhaler thing 2 and 2 together. But I think maybe everyone, at least maybe in the courtroom, is going to interpret that as like, oh, the person that was on the phone was Rocco trying to speak, and Kofi took the phone and tossed it. I think that's going to be the because obviously they haven't thrown it in the aspect of like, oh yeah, whose inhaler was it? Like, it's they because obviously they're supposed to be getting like the test back from that is going to take. What was it going to take, like 36 hours? But now that Kofi's confessed, maybe they like cut that, or maybe they're just not paying attention to it. It's like the results are bad, they just didn't care to because they think they got their guy. So maybe that's what it is. We'll see, because that might circle back soon enough once it'll be revealed that, yeah, it wasn't Kofi's DNA or something. Especially because now he's in the system. It's going to be like, they're like, yeah, Kofi's, it doesn't match the DNA in the system. Wait, yeah, Kofi's in the system, so it's not, so it wasn't him. So I think that might be the direction that goes. But Kofi is saying no matter what, he doesn't want his plea of guilty to get flipped. Because for him, it's like the moment he does that, yeah, I might be free and everything, but that means my family will never get the desire protection. Plus, it'll screw his position over with the group as well, especially because they're telling him, Little Mo in particular was saying, take the fall, so... At the end of the day, though, like it's obviously Lee's trying to come at this from the perspective of like, obviously he was tortured, and she's going to try and push that angle for it to try and get Kofi's charges dropped. Obviously, the back and forth she has with Michael over the course of the episode. Because I even love there's a whole situation with Charlie being like, are you fucking her? Because you better be fucking her if you're trying to like get control of, like, if you're trying to keep her under your control. Because he's like, because Michael's trying to be like, I got this whole situation under control. Because he realizes how bad this looks. Because this could all eventually trail back to Charlie jeopardizing his career and everything. Him being a congressman now, trying to work his way to being mayor, like, obviously is going to screw everything up. Like, once again, we don't know the full scope of his connection to the Desire Gang, because part of me was wondering whether he was like top brass in the Desire Gang, but it's just like, oh, I'm a government official that has ties. But still, as someone else had kind of pointed out, like, obviously, like the criminal world and the official world, obviously there's going to be ties in some regard. But it's like, I was wondering whether or not Michael knows, but it's like, no, because this is his best friend, so he's like, yeah, I'm screwing you over because I asked you to do this. But he doesn't, I don't think he knows the Desire connection. I think he's like, yeah, you probably just ask someone to get something done. But because he's like, because obviously more so than anything, Charlie's like, I'm pissed because my best friend fucked me over and threw me into the deep end with this whole situation. So, because obviously he's trying to, I guess Charlie probably figured everything out on his own, being like, okay, this is the car that, so he probably figures it's like, yeah, I mean, more so than anything, Charlie's only concerned because it's like, you're screwing me over. I think at the end of the day, he doesn't care what happens to Kofi, because it's like, Kofi's a loose end, it's a whatever situation, but that could come back to me. Which obviously that also ties into the whole Desire situation, because was it that Detective Rudy or whatever was like, oh yeah, so your boy got a lawyer, and Lamo's like, yeah, but she's doing that pro bono, so like, they do that type of thing. It's like, I got people on the inside, my boy is, he's a soldier, he's keeping it locked down. It's like, all right, keep it that way, you know? So the moment that got introduced, I'm like, yeah, but that also means there's people keeping an eye that if Kofi flips or switches things up, they can take him out if need be, you know, because granted, I don't think they go through that because it's like, this is more about him, but I think if they get him started, like if they put him in a favorable position where it can work out for him, I guess you'd be afraid that he might start talking desire business with the cops or like his legal representation, that being, like, I don't know. I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front, but obviously what I like about this too is also showing you, like, this episode also shows you Gina isn't just a grieving mother. Like, she probably, we don't know what Gina's situation was, where she got married into this, or whether she came from a similar lifestyle and got married into this very similar lifestyle. Because when the time came, you know what I mean? Because who knows whether she's talking like this from a mob point of view, like a crime family situation, like as being the wife of a crime master, or is she talking about this situation from the perspective of a grieving mother? Because we also get introduced to their other son, Carlo, which we heard about him last episode, because he's the one that they're thinking that this is retribution for, because it's like Carlo beat the crap out, like, I think, like they were saying, like he fucked up some kid's spine. It was like a 15-year-old, because it's like, yeah, because he didn't love the color of his skin. Because so many connecting threads, because we have Michael's boss, Sarah, being there, because I guess she was the judge overseeing it, because obviously it's like a, I think it was a leniency thing about, like, letting him out a little early so that he can go to his brother's funeral and everything. And even Sarah Bowface calling, it's like, oh, not only is Carlo a liar, his mom's a proven liar, because she said that he was with her all day, that was his out. So obviously a mother's going to do what she's going to do to protect her child, right? But I'm wondering, was that like a hit thing? Or because it was about some information, wasn't it? I forgot. They explained it last episode why it happened, I think. I don't remember the ins and outs of why it happened, because they're making it seem like it was just like a straight up hate crime, why he went as far as he did, just because it was like, oh, so maybe it was, but it's still the thing of like, that's my son, so I'm gonna protect him. I don't know. But obviously she greases some palms to get her son, to the funeral, and then the moment like he gets that, because I was thinking like, I didn't know what she was going to do with that situation, but she's the one that made it perfectly clear, like, we need to go big once and end this, which I found so surprising, because you have Jimmy being the damn voice of reason, being like, where's this going to end? Because it's like, because he's being actually interestingly enough, he's the reasonable in this one in this situation, because he blames himself, because it's like, yeah, I gave Rocco the bike, but it's like, no, it's like at least Gina feels that way, and it's like he's thinking like, if this was about that situation with Carlo, why wait till now to strike it? He's like, well, you never know what those desire people are thinking anyway. So he's like, we got to strike back at him. We can't let this go on. But then like, Jimmy's like, where did this end? Like, did he leave a lot of, like, maybe he still has a lot of connections in crime, but like maybe because of losing his son, he's kind of pulling back on it. I don't know. But Gina's the one that's like, hit hard, hit once big, and then end this. And so I was wondering, I was like, geez, like, what does she mean by that? And obviously at the funeral, she goes over and talks to her son, whispering in his ear. I'm like, okay, so Carlo's going to go back. Because the moment we saw him, like, with those cops, I thought he was being arrested. I was like, damn it, they're sending someone on the inside. They're getting someone arrested so they can be on the inside to kill Kofi. That's what I thought it was. But it's like, no, he was already inside. They just end up transferring him to where Kofi is. I'm like, his mom it's like, this is for your brother. Get revenge, and it's like, will killing Kofi really be that big of a deal? I guess it's like, we kill your hitman. I guess it's kind of like the move, I guess, or maybe that's one move amongst many. But she said, do something big. I guess maybe they're going to make a spectacle, an example of Kofi. I don't know, like what, because she said go big once. That doesn't seem like that would be a big enough move, but maybe there's more to it. Like I said, maybe they were going to make a more spectacle situation out of it. Which I ain't gonna lie to you, when that Kofi situation happened, like when he's in that room, like the moment he's getting led away, because I didn't know, I was like, are they using this as an excuse to get him away because Carlo's there? Because obviously Michael had called ahead of time, which I love that whole situation. Like, there's so many moving pieces to this that's so interesting, because obviously Michael's trying to have like a casual conversation with Adam about like, oh yeah, like all this stuff happened, oh, I learned about, it's good that you're using your mom's camera to take these photos, which we'll get to that in a second. And it's like, yeah, your teacher says that you have, that your mom would be proud of you and stuff. And Adam's like, don't pretend like everything's normal. And Michael's like, you have to move on with your life. He's telling Adam that, but even he can't move on with his life because he's there skulking at the funeral because he got on Adam about it. But lo and behold, you're right there too because you feel the guilt as well because you're like, it was a tragic situation, but obviously you're going to do what you're going to do to protect your son, which we haven't even gone to everything he's done to try and protect his son this episode. But he tried to call ahead of time to be like, hey, you got a transfer coming in, Carlo, maybe the paperwork's not through, but you need to protect Kofi. But then he lets him know oh yeah, Baxter. So I don't know whether that cop showing up later on was because it's he was looking for Kofi because they were trying to put him, keep an eye on him. And then later on, that's why the dude showed up when he did. But the moment Kofi got in that room and they made a point to show you the camera at the beginning, I was like, shit, that camera's about to go off. Kofi's screwed. I almost halfway expected Carlo to be somewhere in the room, waiting. I was like, oh God, I was like, this isn't good. And then the camera flicks off. I was like, shit. What I didn't expect was Kofi to catch on too. He turns and he knew immediately, oh, this is a setup. He knew he was screwed. Those dudes came in. One dude got gloves on him. I was like, damn it, come on. And luckily that cop showed up. I was like, oh God, I breathed a sigh of relief when that happened. I was like, dude, that was too damn close. Because I was actually surprised because I expected Carlo to handle that himself. But a home dude that's like, yeah, while you're here, when your sentencing comes, that's when you'll find out where you go. But while you're here, we got you. Lil Mo kind of put the word out. But then he's like, yeah, but, obviously when you have juice in prison, it's one thing. You have juice outside, that's another thing. But the damn Baxters, he's like, they have juice that goes everywhere. There is no kind of escaping their grasp. And even Kofi's like, what am I supposed to do about that? So we never found out. So at the end, we see Kofi going to Carlo being like, I'm Kofi Jones. So my thought is Kofi might be flipping the script by being like, all right, I'm going to tell you what it is. I didn't kill your brother. That wasn't even my car. That car, he had to hit your brother beforehand. Probably going to let slip about the, he doesn't know anything, but he'll know enough to be like, this is where the car was. Because I didn't know what to make of that situation. I didn't know whether it was going to be hey, Kofi was going to kill Carlo before Carlo could kill him. I didn't know what to make of that, or whether Carlo summoned him, but it seemed like it was kind of supposed to be like a, hey, let's sit down and talk. So what's Kofi going to say? I don't know. Because Desire doesn't have the power to because the home dude was telling Kofi, Desire doesn't have the juice that the Baxters do. They have long reach. The Desire ain't in no position to be going toe to toe with the Baxters. Granted, they might not have a choice in the coming future. We'll see how things kind of play out. An element in this episode I kept being curious about was the whole situation with Adam taking the pictures. I was like, what the hell is that about? So I was assuming, at first I was like, the way he was taking pictures of the bruises and stuff like that. At first I thought he was trying to make himself feel like Kofi, because he was it looked like he was going to lay on the floor afterwards. So I was wondering, was that him trying to symbolize having your mug shot taken, but it was a close up and everything. That's why I was kind of confused. But then he starts taking pictures of the crime scene. And I'm like, oh, are you gathering stuff so that if the time comes and your guilt gets the best of you, you can turn this in and turn yourself in? I didn't know what to really make of that. There was even that moment in the elevator when those guys are like, oh yeah, what are you here for? Yeah, what are you here for? And they looked at him and he's like, murder. And they're like, yeah, sure. Okay, killer. And he kind of has to laugh along, but it's But I didn't know what to make of those pictures. Especially, I also was curious about that situation when Michael is talking to his teacher Franny, and I was wondering about that. Where it's like, oh, does he have a girlfriend or something? And she's like, well, has he said anything about having? Obviously we know they're a thing, but part of me was like, does he know? Does he have a feeling? Even when he was talking to Adam later on, and Adam was like, yeah, she lets us call her by her first name. He's like, which is Franny. And I was thinking, is Michael going to pick up on that? I wasn't sure what to make of that. But obviously it's like, oh yeah, what happened to Adam's shoulder? Oh yeah, we were wrestling, but it's getting better. It's getting better. I was like, okay, so that's going to be another lie Adam's going to have to keep up with. But I wasn't sure where Adam was going to go with that. And then finally he presents it to Frank. Because I'm thinking Franny probably immediately was thinking some abuse at home type of situation. I know it's got to make her feel weird when Michael was like, after, it was rough when his mom died, but you were there for him. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be weird, because he's putting you in that position, almost like a paternal situation of you stepped in to be there supporting him and stuff like that in a way, which is interesting considering you to her banging, so it makes that compliment a little weird. It wasn't going as far as the paternal angle, but you could lean into it, making it almost come off as a paternal angle of you being there. But at least he was coming at it from the thing of like, oh, you're being his teacher, but you're also went above and beyond because you're supporting him. One ways in one. So that's just interesting. But Adam spilling it all to her, like I said, I think she was under the impression like there might have been like some abuse at home. I think is what she was kind of getting at. I thought, but Adam opens up about everything, and it being like, you know, I watched basically the light go from his eyes, and, you know, I watched him go and I left him there, and he's confiding in her. It's like, here's these pictures. You want it more on, because he couldn't stand the lies, because he's lying to literally everyone. And it's like, eventually obviously it's been clear from the beginning, like this was never going to sit well with him, especially because like obviously Rocco's funeral, and obviously he had that whole conversation with his dad and everything. So it's been weighing on him. Now the big $1 million question is, what is Franny going to do with this information? Like the look on her face, like, shit, what did you do? Drag me into this. Now, part of me was wondering, I'm like, you don't think she has a connection to the Baxter family, do you? Like, you don't think she's like a cousin or something married to this family? Like, just the look on her face, she was very like, it was like a blank stare. Like, I don't know whether she's like, damn it, like, you dragged me into something concerning the Baxters. Like, you should have never, now I've got this on me, like, obviously, she now knows the ins and outs about, like, oh, like, she might try to, like, flip this situation. I don't know. Especially because they're in a relationship, like, what that means for her now. Like, this is going to cause some situation later on down the road, but I'm not quite sure how that's going to end up playing out, so. There's also the Nancy situation, because he had to clear it up to be like, I lied to the cop. I'm like, why did you do that? It's like, well, and I was like, all right, so Michael and him already talked about how he was going to clear this up to Nancy. It's like, I was 15, I used to take the car and drive around, and the moment the cop asked me, I blinked back then to then. So, you know, it's like, well, don't worry, you're beyond, like, you know, the statute of limitations kind of passed for that. Now it's for your dad. And he says, I forgot what it was, mi culpa or something like that. And it's like, and Adam was like, what's that? I'm sorry in Latin. And he's like, no, my fault. And it's like, I'm hearing those words you see Adam definitely kind of look down a little bit more. It just the guilt over the situation even more, which is interesting, because that's the second time Latin came up in the episode, because there was what that a judge had said to Kofi when he was 10, because it's like, yeah, you know, skateboarding when black or whatever, and basically he said in Latin, too young to know wrong from right, and because of that, because it's like Dolly something, and because of that, Kofi's like, even to this day, people still call me Dolly because of it, you know. So I was like, I just thought that was interesting that Latin came up twice like that. Is it that big of a deal? I mean, to be fair, like, laws written in Latin, habeas corpus and shit like that, you know. So I mean, it's not that surprise, but obviously when it comes to the law, a lot of that stuff is written in Latin, obviously, you know. But that was an interesting development. But I brought it up earlier, but haven't circled back to it. There's a whole Michael situation, him at the bar and everything. And he, you know, I love that whole situation, because the guy was like, oh, what's your name? He's like, Dylan. Because I thought he was referencing like the person who said the whole rage against the dying of the light. Maybe he was given the alias, but I thought he was referencing like, oh, that's the person who said it. Maybe he was, and you know, I'm ignorant. I've heard that phrase over and over again. I don't know who originally said it, but he said Dylan Thomas, and the guy's like, oh, Leland. So maybe he was giving an alias, but the moment he said it, he kind of looked like, all right, I'll roll with it. So maybe that was the plan from the beginning. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But it's like, Leland actually came to this bar because of you. And it's like, what? I followed you here. And then I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, my wife is cheating on me. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. But also Leland's kind of drunk, so Leland might not remember running into Michael. You better hope not, because he's going to be like, wait, didn't you say your name was Dylan? Your name's Michael. You're a judge. What was, like, there's so many loose ends that things could kind of come back to bite him in the ass. Really quickly, speaking of loose ends, because Adam went back to the crime scene taking photos, he ran across that vehicle again. Once again, that vehicle followed him. So whoever it was, he was holding up the camera. He never took a picture of it, but they drove by. They were real damn close to running him over. But it's like, who the hell is that? That's going to probably end up being a big reveal when we find out like who's actually in that car. I don't know. That's going to be interesting, because they were a literal witness to what went down. So they probably saw Adam in that car, so they know who it is. Maybe potentially. They definitely know it wasn't Kofi. But getting back to it, Michael manipulating Leland to, it's like, yeah, my wife's cheating on me. It's like, yeah, she got I followed this credit card, and it's like, yeah, she got $32 worth of gas. Yeah, but I had her car. He's like, damn, I was like, he was feeling it for quote unquote Dylan. I was like, man. And then when he's there, it's like, 8:45, 8 o'clock for, looking through the security footage, and he's crying, he's faking. He's like, oh, this is so hard. Oh, the kindness of others. I was like, man, oh man. Look, for one, not only Michael, but just in general, Bryan Cranston chewing up the scenery. Like, oh my God. I was like, oh, you low bastard, like faking this. And then he looks at it. So obviously he makes sure to get a picture of the car that was behind Adam, because maybe he saw Adam's face. Who knows? Obviously that's still up to debate. So he ends up deleting that. But it's like, I'm so curious to see what ends up happening with that. Like, especially, I'm sure we're not over with that Leland thing. There's like so many loose end pieces for things. Because once again, Nancy's at your house. The damn evidence that the dog hid away is underneath the car, the one of the, I was about to say car, but under the one of the chairs or something. And I'm like, when is that going to come into play? It's going to at some point. The dog is going to drag it out, or someone's going to see what the dog is scratching. Oh, let me see what is this? That's going to turn into a whole damn issue and problem in itself. Nancy's obviously like, because no one's going to look at, a judge a certain way, but it's like, at some point Nancy's going to get a little suspicious about certain things. Like certain things just aren't going to add up at some point in time. Because it's going, like I said, it's going to be that point where it's like, you're telling so many lies, because you're telling different lies to different people. So eventually people are going to come together and compare notes about all these damn lies. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Like I said, in particular, I want to know what that whole Kofi and Carlo thing is going to turn into. Because I think this is going to be set up for Kofi to be like, yeah, I'm going to plead I'm going to change my plea, which is going to disrupt a lot of shit. It's going to mess up a lot of stuff because they need him to, because once again, if he doesn't take the fall for this, then it's going to open things back up, and it's going to lead eventually, potentially, to Charlie. And obviously that's going to lead to some issues between Charlie and Michael. That's going to be for damn sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Especially because the DA is supposed to be showing up at the court, as Lee was saying. So like they are getting towards the direction of the judge, the DA dropping the charges. But the thing is, even Charlie said it, like, Lee takes after you. And the fact of the matter is, she's not going to let this go. Like, but Michael's like, the moment the charges are going to get dropped, and it's going to be fine. It's like, no, it's Lee. It's like kind of insinuating like she's a bloodhound. Like the moment she smells, probably more like a shark, a good shark, I guess. Like the moment she smells blood in the water, because she smells a fishy situation here that she might try. I don't know. Because obviously it's the whole thing of like, yeah, the moment you start seeing your options weighed, like maybe Kofi's going to change his mind. And now he will, because he's like, the Baxters are after me. If I plead not guilty and prove that I didn't do it, then maybe we can change this. Maybe he's starting with Carlo, but eventually would get to Lee to change things. I don't know. I cannot wait for the next episode to see where all of this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it, good day, and goodbye.